Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video we're going to be comparing a 2003 Corvette Z06 to a 1996 Dodge Viper GTS, and they're a lot more similar than you think. But first and foremost, a huge shout out and thank you to Harrison Imports for giving me some time with both the Viper and the Corvette. Check out their inventory in the link below. Let's get straight into the video. Now let's pop under the hoods of both of the cars. Starting over here with the Corvette Z06, we have a naturally aspirated 5.7 liter V8 that goes through a 6-speed manual transmission. Power outputs are 405 horsepower and then 400 pound-feet of torque. And then notice where the wheel is here on the Z06 and then where the engine is. It's going to be very important. It's kind of closer to like a mid-mounted front engine car, if that makes sense, kind of like an AMG GT. Now coming over to the Viper, we have a naturally aspirated 8-liter V10 that also goes through a 6-speed manual. Power outputs are 415 horsepower and then 488 pound-feet of torque. So the biggest difference is the torque. This has so much more torque compared to the Corvette. And then also they did kind of like the same thing. So like notice where the wheel is and then where the engine is. So kind of like that front mid-mounted design. Now from a display perspective, I think the engines both look cool, but like a V10 is always gonna be cooler than a V8. And also like all the stuff that's exposed, this isn't nearly as exposed because it's just the hood. Now that's easier to close because this is so much heavier with everything, because like it's literally like the whole front end coming up, but it definitely looks more aesthetically pleasing. Now let's go over the front ends of both of the vehicles. Starting over here with the Z06, notice that you've got the two little stripes right here that say Z06 on it. And then we've got the pop-up halogen lights here. Got the Corvette logo in the center, and then notice you've got another Corvette logo. Now I am gonna quickly turn off the lights on the Z06 so that you guys can see what it looks like with the lights down, because it definitely looks a lot cleaner with the lights down versus with the lights up. You can see it definitely looks a lot sleeker. Now coming over to the Viper, I feel like the Viper's definitely aged a lot better overall aesthetically. So again, we've got these halogen projector bulbs. I love the venting in the center. We've got the two stripes down the center with the Viper logo. Fog lights down right there. And then I just love the overall look of the front, right? You've got the venting there, which looks okay. This, again, I feel like it's just aged a lot better. And then the other thing is you've got really cool venting here on the hood, and then there on the far part of the hood. But yeah, seeing these next to each other, it's like, again, this is just my personal opinion. That looks beautiful. That looks good, but it just hasn't aged as well as the Viper. Now let's go over the tire and wheel setup. So starting over here with the Viper, we've got two 75mm tires wrapped around 17-inch wheels, and the Corvette has the exact same setup. But in the rear, we've got 17-inch wheels on the Viper with three 35mm tires, and then on the Corvette, 18-inch wheels with two 95mm tires. So the Viper has wider tires there in the rear, and they both kind of went for a silver chrome design on the wheels themselves. The Corvette is a little bit more complex, but the Viper definitely has a nice clean look. Notice you've got the Viper logo there in the center, Corvette logo. They always have to flex their logos. Z06 badge here that also says 405 horsepower, and then you've got the venting here. The Viper definitely looks a lot better from a venting perspective. It says Viper GTS, and then you can see everything else here on the side, and then notice you've got kind of like more venting just down below with the Z06. But yeah, I mean, from the sides they both look good, but again, I just feel like they did a better job with the Viper. Now, of course, rear storage is somewhat important with both of these cars because, you know, you've got to be able to take this to golf and all that kind of stuff. I'm just making jokes. But anyways, you can see you can fit quite a bit here in the back of the Viper, and the storage space is connected there to the driver compartment. I'm just going to let that down. And then we'll pop over here to the Corvette. Now lifting that up, notice that still a good amount of storage space, and then notice that the shelf kind of continues. So the Viper, it seems like the storage space is deeper, but there's not as much of it, whereas the Corvette, the storage space isn't as deep, but then there's more storage space, and we'll just kind of close that up. Now let's finish things up with the rear. So again, starting over here with the Corvette, notice that you've got the red taillights, which I think go really nice with this yellow paint, if you ask me. Got the spoiler here on the back, you've got the Corvette logo, and another Corvette logo down below. And then we do have the 4 exhaust tips, which don't worry, we'll have an exhaust clip just right after this with both of the cars so you guys can compare. But yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Coming over to the Viper though, it looks amazing. I love the look of the tail lights. I love the stripes that come down, and then just how they did this with the bodywork in the back. Got the Dodge logo, got the Viper GTS, and then we've got the 2 exhaust tips out of the back. Now the Corvette's definitely, I will say this before the exhaust clips, the Corvette's louder. The Viper just has like this angrier sound. I don't know how to explain it, but anyways, look at the tire width difference too in the back. But again, just my non-professional personal opinion, I think that's just aged better. It looks just like a spaceship, and that just looks like an old Corvette. Now let's pop into the interior here with the Corvette, and this is where the Corvette might kind of win. So you have a normal door panel right here, normal window controls and all that kind of stuff. Memory seats as well. You've got the Bose sound system, and then these seats here, full leather here. They say Z06 on them. Definitely look really nice. They're manually adjustable. The pedals are spaced out enough so that you can actually drive with regular shoes. Can't be said about the Viper. You guys will see that momentarily. But yeah, that's kind of like the initial part. Let's pop into the Z06. Now let's quickly go over the interior here with the Z06. So notice the steering wheel is pretty much blank, which definitely cool. You don't really see that in modern cars. In terms of the steering feel, relatively heavy. We'll compare that to the Viper feel. Got the stock there for the lights, turn signal, windshield wiper stock on the other side. And then you've got the analog gauge cluster right here. I think it looks pretty cool. You've got the speed there that goes up to 200 miles an hour, and then you've got the RPMs right next to it. Again, it's an analog setup, but I feel like it looks really good. 65,000 miles on this car. And the other thing to note is this does have a heads-up display, so that's a cool piece of modern technology. And then coming over here, I'm pretty sure this is an aftermarket unit for the radio. Looks okay. I don't know what the stock unit looks like, but again, I'm pretty sure this is aftermarket. Got the dual zone climate controls here, which work really well. The thing that's interesting about the Z06 is the driver one has no like dial that shows you where you're at, where the passenger one does. And also look, there's like a gap, whereas there's no gap, so just completely different. And then as for the shifter itself, so first off with the clutch, hopefully you guys can kind of see my foot right here. Not super long for the throw itself. The clutch isn't super heavy. And then as for the shifter, really notchy into the gears. I wouldn't call it a short throw, but I would say that the throws are relatively good. And then reverse is all the way over and up here with the Z06. And yeah, notice that we've got this for the traction. It says active handling. The Viper doesn't have anything like that. Got an e-brake right here, and then we have the center console. And then here's a quick look at the storage space behind us. And then we've got this over the airbag cover, says Corvette. Got a grab handle. We actually have a glove box. And then finishing things here at the top, it's kind of just like a black cloth headliner with these headrests on it. Definitely nice. You've got a regular mirror. But with all that being said, let's head over to the Viper. Now let's take a look at the door panel on the Viper. So first off, I feel like the door panel just looks more aesthetically pleasing, but also there's like no controls on it. You have this for the emergency, and then you have the actual door handle itself right there. And then obviously opening the door is pretty cool because you have that little button that you pull and everything. I think that's neat. But yeah, pretty bare bones. And then notice the door seal here itself, absolutely massive. And then here are the seats. So you guys will notice full leather seats here with the Viper. I feel like these seats just as nice in the Corvette. The bolster's definitely a little bit bigger. Now here's the issue. The pedals so close together, you can't really wear normal shoes and drive it. It's kind of difficult. Light control. But yeah, there's one more look before we pop in. Here's the steering wheel in the Viper. It's got leather all around the steering wheel with the Viper logo there in the center portion. If you guys haven't seen the key already, the key definitely looks cool because it's got a Viper on it. But aside from that, we've got a little stock there for the turn signal and then windshield wipers, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, everything's simplistic. I like the look of it. And then here is the gauge cluster. So notice we got RPMs and speed goes up 200 miles an hour. This one has about 2,900 miles on it, which kind of says something, right? With the Vipers, it's not nearly as daily drivable, so a lot more Vipers gonna have low miles versus the Corvette, where they're way more daily drivable, so people put more miles on them. Just kind of makes sense. No heads-up display or anything like that, but you do get kind of a cool view out of the hood here with the Viper, which I don't know. I think that just definitely looks cool. Now coming over here, we've got a bunch of little gauges. Like you can see, for example, that is for like the temperature. You've got oil, all that kind of stuff, battery voltage. Got our vents here. One thing I will mention, just being honest here, the AC in the Corvette works way better than the AC in the Viper. Like this does have AC, but it's not nearly as nice as what you get in the Corvette. So you will be sweating quite a bit in this car. Single zone climate, and then you've got the window controls, which I did the wrong window. They're in the center. So again, kind of in weird places here in the Viper. Kind of adds to the novelty though. Here's the shifter. Now, first off, the clutch itself. So definitely a longer throw to get into the clutch. Definitely feels a little bit heavier. And then as for the shifter, feels just as notchy. The shifters actually feel very similar with both of these cars. The biggest difference is the clutch in terms of the travel and everything. And then here is the e-brake. And then notice we've got storage space right here. And then with the cargo netting, passenger is really close. Again, this feels like a Miata in the interior. The Corvette feels like substantial interior wise. This feels tiny, again, like a Miata. No glove box though, so yeah, that's interesting. And then finishing things up top here, we've got more netting here at the top, which is definitely cool. And then aside from that, we've got just a regular mirror over here with the mirror dimmer function. But yeah, at least they give you some storage here in the Viper. Now let's quickly go over pricing. Now pricing is all over the place with both of these cars depending on mileage, condition, and all that. I mean, like these Vipers, for example, can be anywhere from like $50,000 to well over $100,000 depending on how nice it is, how many miles, what year, all that kind of stuff. And then the Corvette, similar story, but not nearly as high of a ceiling. Usually you don't see these for over 6 figures, even if it's super low miles. It's just not as typical. Like the Viper is just kind of more of a collectible than the Corvette from a pricing perspective. Now I am going to pick a winner for today's video, and yes, I am picking the Dodge Viper. I feel like it just looks so much better. It's aged so much better. It's got a more unique engine. It has an 8-liter V10, and it's just absolutely crazy. And yeah, again, I feel like it's more of a collectible, whereas the Corvette, I just feel like it doesn't have that same kind of collectability. There's so many Corvettes. Everyone thinks they're Corvette special, which, yeah, that's a whole nother story. But this, I don't know, even though it's way more expensive, yeah, if I were to pick between these cars, I would pick the Viper. And here's the thing I have to say is, yes, the Corvette's more daily drivable, but if I want a daily drivable car, I'll buy a new car, and then I'll get this to drive on the weekends when I feeling pretty crazy. Now let's get some things up for our comparison between this Corvette Z06 and this Viper GTS. And again, a huge shout out and thank you to Harrison Imports for giving me some time with the Viper and with the Corvette. Check out their inventory in the link below. I'll see all of you guys in the next video.